Hey folks, I don't know how to pin videos to the top of my channel. Honestly, I don't even think you can do that, but I'll get it figured out. I just feel the urge to share my testimony again. Maybe somebody out there going through something similar or have questions, or you never know. So I'd rather obey the Lord and just do it. Y'all, I haven't always had a rough life. I guess, if I could be honest, which I try my best to be, all the rough stuff started when I gave my life to Christ. The day I gave my life to Christ, everything started crumbling down. And I know now that it was meant to humble me, y'all, because it's just people in my daily life, they know how prideful I used to be. And now I look back and I say, pride? What pride? What, I mean, there's no reason to be prideful, because everything can be lost, everything can be broken, everything can be shattered. I went through it. I've seen a lot of prideful Christians, y'all, and the Lord really, really, really humbled me through a lot of tragedies. So I want to go ahead and start. I gave my life to Christ fully in 2012. It was September of 2012. It's 10 years ago and some change. Before that, I had a few things happen to me starting around 2002, so 20 years ago. I had taken some medications that weren't prescribed to me, if you catch my drift, and I overdosed. And I saw hell. It wasn't pleasant. I know there's a lot of people that don't believe in hell, but I tell y'all, it's real. And I don't wish nobody, not even my worst enemy, I don't wish that on anybody. Those who don't know Christ, I pray that they find Him. Oh, I knew that place wasn't made for me, and it's not made for you. God doesn't put any of us there. We put ourselves there. So that was the first time my heart had stopped. I had a near-death experience also. My heart didn't stop this time, but 2008, I was working, doing water transfer for a company. I don't know if any of you have oil rigs all around your place or whatever, but we do here in Louisiana. Well, we used to. And the long row of aluminum pipes that you see on the side of the road, I was part of a crew that used to lay those down. And it was very, very, very straining on the body. Those pipes probably weighed, I don't know, probably about 13 feet long, I guess. And they probably only weighed about 45 pounds each. But it's just the fact of having thousands of them that you're throwing down and clamping, and it was really strainful. And never really been a drug user. All the other guys were, smoking meth and all that. I just couldn't get into that. I never had energy drinks before, but I tried some. There was a certain energy drink in 2008, and I haven't seen it on a shelf since. It was called cocaine, and it tasted like Red Hots, like the candy Red Hots. And one of my buddies that I was working with was like, hey, let's see how many we can chug. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, I downed 3 back to back. Then I looked on the back of the can, and it said 3 Red Bulls in 1. So you can imagine how many Red Bulls I would have drank in that moment. I felt like my heart was going to explode. Keep in mind, I was 23 going on 24. I was healthy, in shape. I didn't have an ounce of fat on me. And I winded up in the hospital. I couldn't control my bladder. My heart was racing. It was fluttering. I felt like it would stop for a second and then it would beat again, and I would feel it all in my face. It was just horrible. It was a horrible feeling. In that moment in the hospital, I did cry out to the Lord because I was scared to die, you know. But now looking back, I really didn't mean it. Just like when I cried out to the Lord when I came back to in 2002, I didn't mean it. And how I know I didn't mean it is because I went back doing everything that I was doing before, like a dog returning to its vomit. And I had no repentance in me. Some time goes by, 2009, August of 2009, I met my wife. And we started dating. And I was still the same old guy as before. Didn't notice any changes. We had got married and had a kid, and in 2010 we got married and had a kid, had our baby boy, and still no change. 2011 comes around. My wife was pregnant again with our second baby, and some people had came over out of nowhere. I don't even know where they came from. The guy's name was Gary. Can't remember his last name now. But I saw Melissa get saved, my wife. Like, he told her how to be saved, and then I saw that. And I saw the tears rolling down her face, and I saw that she was just so full of peace. And here I was, around this time, I was a 26-year-old, and I was full of rage and anger, and I can't explain it to y'all. I guess I was mad that I was born. I guess I don't know how else to explain it. But when I saw that on my wife, I wanted that. I didn't want this rage anymore. I didn't want any of that. Well, I spent a year asking questions. I'd always talk to my mom because my mom stayed in Scripture. She still does today. And I would ask her questions, and she would answer them. My most confusing question that I couldn't understand, I asked my mom, I said, "Mom, Jesus is the Son of God?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Jesus is God?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Mom, that's confusing to me. So if Jesus is God, who is he praying to?" And then she answered that question, and I do believe she said that he was setting an example for us. And I couldn't understand, y'all. I couldn't understand. Then it finally hit me after I read John 1, the whole chapter. Jesus is the Word. The Word is God. And the Word was with God. It was in that moment it hit me. And I gave my life to Christ. And y'all, literally everything started crumbling around me. I went to, because I didn't understand everything. I was still new to it and everything. My experience with other Christians were just meanness. Pure meanness. Everywhere I went, these Christians were so mean. And I didn't want to be like them. I didn't. Because if you'd walk up to them and ask them something, they would take it as an attack instead of a legitimate question. And they would roll their eyes and all this other thing. My daddy used to say it best. When we went into church buildings when I was a kid, everybody had a smile on their face. Because I guess they didn't have anything traumatic happen to them. I don't know. I don't know their situations. But my daddy used to tell me, beware of smiling faces. I didn't know what he meant until I got to that point in life where I did want to ask questions. And I just kept asking my mom. And she would answer them without being aggravated or mad or anything else that everybody else was towards me. And then if anybody knew me before this, They would have, and I've heard people say that. People used to tell me that, or say behind my back anyway, and other people would come to me that I would just be an evil person for the rest of my life. I would amount to nothing and all this other stuff. And it really hurt me when I heard these things, but people don't care. People don't care. They just say what they want to say. They strive to hurt other people. Now, fast forward to now, it no longer bothers me what people say about me because the Lord knows me. So I got saved and baptized for the first time September of 2012. January 2013 rolls around. I went to this church building, and it was the last one I've ever stepped foot in where the preacher actually told people about hell and all these other things. I haven't heard that, and I know everybody always says the same thing. I've probably tried 30 church buildings since 2013, and they've all been the same, just apostate and concerts and gossip. That's all I've seen in them. And the preacher just nonstop, God's love, God's love, God's love. There's never any talk about hell. There's never any sayings about how to be saved. It's say this little prayer after me, and that's not biblical. Romans 10:9 through 13. I've never heard that come out of a preacher's mouth, except for the one who baptized me. Anyways, so January 20th, that preacher had a stroke and passed away. And it hurt me because when I actually had big time questions and my mom couldn't answer them, I would call him and he would answer them, and they were spot on. Now looking back, they were spot on. And I didn't have that anymore. I didn't have someone I can go ask questions to. 1 week later, I was sitting on, this was on a Sunday, I do believe. I was sitting in a recliner right next to my wife. There was another recliner next to me. She was sitting there. And I asked her, I said, do you mind if I go down to the pond and go fishing? And she said, no, can you bring the baby to me? This is our third baby. He was 2 months old. And I don't remember what TV show we were watching, but I was into it. And I waited about 20 minutes. And then I said, okay, I'm going to go to the pond. And she said, go get the baby. And I said, okay. I got up. I went in there. And I picked him up out of the bassinet. And his head went straight back. I knew he was gone. I knew it. I'd never done first aid on anybody. I didn't know what to do, so I screamed at the top of my lungs. And my wife come running back there, and she grabbed the baby and took off running. And I was freaking out. My baby was dead. Don't ever say this stuff can't happen to you, because I used to say this too. Sorry, y'all. Talking about all this stuff doesn't help me, but I hope it helps somebody. A year later, I winded up on the other side of the country in the oil field, over 10 hours away from my family, working all the time. I couldn't do it anymore, so I quit and I came back and I found a local job. And it was at that local job that I'd gotten hurt. And I was there almost 2 years when this happened. I was doing something that the boss told me to do, which I knew legally I wasn't supposed to do that when a giant part comes out of the machine. It was a Mazak machine, but when it comes out of the machine, you're not supposed to re-tap holes by hand using a 64-inch pipe wrench and about a 3-inch tap. You're not supposed to do that by law here in Louisiana. But the dude told me either do that or go home. And I knew what he meant. that I would be fired. So I thought about my family, and I just worked through it. There was 48 holes, and again, the holes were about 3 inches wide and about 4 inches deep for the bolts to go into, and they were all about 3/1000ths off. By law, they're supposed to go back through the machine again, but they didn't do that. And I got about halfway through. I was probably 23 holes in. Nobody was helping me. And I felt this pop right here, and it radiated all the way down my back. And I just sat down. Never felt anything like that before. It hurt. And then the supervisor had walked over there and asked me what was wrong, and I told him. And he called me a bad word. So in a rage, I got up and I finished the holes. I tried to tell him I got hurt, but he wasn't listening to me. I tried to tell the general manager about it. He wouldn't listen to me. So I took matters in my own hands and went to a doctor. Found out that I had degenerative disc in my back, and I had no idea what the future would hold about my shoulder. Doctors couldn't find anything else. They said I had a bulge in my neck, and I had 6 degenerative discs in my back, lowering of the spine, I guess you could say. My spine, there was no disc in between 2 of them. They were rubbing each other, and they still are today. I used to brag all the time, be so proud of my strength and everything, and now it feels like the Lord was like, okay, focus on me, not your strength, and he took it away. 2016, so this was a whole year later. My doctor got tired of me coming in and out of there. I was always complaining about this area too, and my back, but he never did anything about this. Well, he did an MRI, and he told me, he said, now, I don't know what it is, but it could be this. And there's nothing I can do about it because there's nobody in Louisiana that does this operation, or it's for thoracic outlet syndrome. And so I had to drive all the way to Dallas. And I had some tests done, and turns out if I wouldn't have went in there, the doctor gave me about 6 months and I would have been dead. My first rib was pinching my subclavian artery and the main nerve to my right arm. So your first rib and your collarbone kind of sit like this, and the artery runs in between them. It was compressing them. So he had to remove my first rib right here. And when he did that, had the surgery March 22nd of 2018. So that's been that long. The next morning I'd woke up, and after surgery, and there was a nurse making a lot of noise. That's when I woke up, and I sat up and asked her what she was doing. She said, I'm getting your medicine. And I said, okay. By this time I was already in pain management and everything else. And I started feeling really dizzy. I can't explain that to nobody. For a brief second, fear came over me. And then, I'm telling you, it was half a second fear. And then all of a sudden I felt this peace. So strong that I literally smiled. And then lights out. I'd coded. My heart had stopped. When I come back to, there was about 25 nurses in this room. One was on top of me pumping my chest. And my hearing came back real slow, and so did my sight. It was like looking through a straw, and then everything got bigger. And then I asked the nurse, I said, what are you doing? I was just asleep. And she said, sir, no one sleeps with their eyes open. And I knew. I looked over at my wife, and I saw these big crocodile tears coming down. The nurses ran out, and I said, what happened? And she said, you died. Well, it's appointed to man once to die. I didn't die. I'm still here. But my heart had stopped. I kept having dreams, like the Lord was calling me to do something, and I didn't know what it was. After that, I had no idea. 2019, I started doing videos on TikTok. And then December, I had to have a sinus surgery. Simple sinus surgery. Supposedly there was nothing to it. Before that, March 8th, I had to watch my daddy die, and that ripped my heart out. My dad died in hospice, and he was my best friend. Not just my dad to me, he was my best friend. Anything wrong in my life, I'd call him, and I didn't have that no more. It's pushed me closer to the Lord. When I had this sinus surgery, I get home, I started feeling dizzy again like I did a year prior, and that last surgery, this surgery, and next thing I knew, I blacked out. On the third time that I blacked out, I saw this bright light, and I already made a video about this about 2 or 3 months ago. Sorry for the pauses, I got to give myself a minute. But I saw this bright light, and I heard thousands of people talking and laughing, and it was just like a celebration. I heard it sounded like wine glasses tapping, and I couldn't see anything but this bright light. And through this bright light, a kid walked up to me and told me to wake up 3 times, and then when I came back to, my wife was in my face. It seemed like to me she was pumping my chest also. Fast forward to today. Broken, beat down Christian who's tired and drained and weary, who's waiting on the Lord and just doing as he's told. Again, folks, don't say this stuff can't happen to you, because I learned those 3 times that life goes quickly, and in the blink of an eye, you could die. Again, I hope this helps somebody out there. Jesus is coming so very soon, y'all. Keep looking up. Romans 10:9-13. I love all of you, and God bless.